fucking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman. We're talking Tiger. We're talking Charlie. We're talking PNC Championship. And joining me to do just that, Mark Immelman is here. Mark, good to see you.
How's it, boys? How are we all doing? Hey, quickly, before we get into it, I was almost in your neck of the woods there for the last couple of days, Greg.
Oh, yeah?
New York City for a couple of days. Man, I love that place. Anyway, I've considered moving to the Northeast, but then it was frigid last night when we came home. I'm like, nah, I'll stick in the South.
Too much snow in the Northeast. Greg DuCharme is here. Greg, have you been shoveling this year? How's it been so far?
No, we have not. Nothing more than a flurry so far. So no shoveling yet. I can't wait to shovel though. I spent some years traveling back to Florida and up to the Northeast, and I realized I love the seasons. I love the wintertime. I love the snow. It makes me feel tough. So I like it.
I can't wait to shovel is probably not a quote that most people utter, but you're going to get that here on the First Cut. That's where you're going to find that. We're going to get to
first.
Right. We're going to get to Tiger. We're going to get to the PNC Championship. Mark, as our resident international, did you catch any of the World Cup final today?
Oh, yeah. I have to admit that I might have skipped church to watch the World Cup.
Wow. How about that?
Well, yeah,
Wow.
look, it's a big deal. It's obviously people know it's a big deal over here, but if you go to the rest of the world and the Soccer World Cup is on, I mean, people stop work for this thing. And when you got two powerhouses like Argentina and France going at it, and look, it looked like it almost became a yawner for a while, but then, golly, I mean, you almost hated to see somebody lose. So yeah, I watched it and I was riveted. My wife and I both.
It gets to the point, Greg, where it's easy to be a prisoner of the moment. Obviously, it just happened a couple of hours ago. But when you start thinking about the scale of the World Cup final, the personalities and teams that were involved, Lionel Messi going for his first World Cup, France trying to go back to back, for that game to play out as it did, that could be one of the greatest games of all time, like of any sport. Like of all time, when you start thinking about just the sheer scale of that match.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. It paints a picture of the global audience watching. And it's really unlike anything else, even the Olympics. You don't get that kind of audience on a single event. Now, I'm not a big soccer guy. Of course, I tuned in for a little bit, but it's definitely not my forte. But even I appreciate what that means on a global scale. I mean, these guys put so much into it, and they're playing for a lot of things throughout the year. They're playing on their own private teams and their own clubs and playing for their own championships. But you don't get a lot of opportunities to win a World Cup like Messi and all those guys. So it's an incredible event.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, look, soccer, football is huge in Africa, very, very big in South Africa. But in college, I lived with 3 Argentinian roommates, and they are rabid about soccer. Okay, and for the longest time, they didn't win World Cups, and you could see the pain that they'd sort of deal with when it came to soccer. There was this love thing, and you felt like they were let down all of the time, kind of like being a Falcons fan in a way, I guess. Anyway, I watched it today, and in many respects, I was happy for Argentina because it's just so meaningful. But then I watch Mbappe, who scores a hat-trick in the World Cup final. I mean, I want to know from you, Rick, what the odds are on one guy scoring a World Cup final hat-trick and then not winning the World Cup.
Well, I'll tell you what, the odds for him to score a hat trick, if you went to a sports book, were 50-1, which means it was probably much longer than that, because that's only the odds that sports books are going to give you. And
I mean, that's like a hole-in-one bet, I feel like.
Yes, correct. The hole-in-one odds are always horrible. So they're bad odds, but then to throw in the fact that they don't actually win is like, it's crazy. It's gonna be one that like it gets referenced in record books for a while.
Certainly, and then look, he wins the Golden Boot, right, for the best soccer player of the tournaments. And I'm sort of wondering now, because they obviously, I don't think they're celebrating, but they're having team time, or they might be asleep or whatever it is. But then you go back to France. He's an icon. The guy, he can sign his own checks now. All right, and then you say to him, "Would you trade that Golden Boot for the World Cup?" I'd be interested to ask him that question one day.
I think that answer is yes. Now, I saw a lot of Twitter crowning Lionel Messi the GOAT after Argentina accomplished the victory today. So from one GOAT of Messi to another in Tiger Woods, we turn to the PNC Championship. But we got to start at the top of the leaderboard, gentlemen. That's what we do. And it's not the Woods team. It's not the Thomas team. It's not Team Daly. It's Team Singh, Greg. And VJ with Sun Cass, who they've come in second in this event countless times, go 59-59 to get the job done in Florida.
Yeah, pretty cool scorecard to put up there. But a couple things about them really impressed me. You know, just watching the event, you could kind of sense that they were the team because of where they were on the leaderboard. The Thomases had kind of stalled out a little bit. The Dailies were too far ahead. And you're looking at this and it's like, okay, well, the Singhs are right there and they got the most holes to play. So I think they're probably the team to beat. And then it started to get a little nervy. You know, Cass had a couple of putts. He kind of lost his speed control, although he's got a great golf swing. He hit some high quality shots. The one on the early par 5, the first par 5 on the back 9 from like 250, he just stuffed it in there. That was a sweet shot. And then VJ, of course, is so fun to watch swing. And it highlights the joy of watching this event, because VJ is a guy, when I first started playing, I admired his golf swing so much. I admired his tempo, and he was a guy I'd try to copy in a way. And then, and when you look at the teams and you see, okay, well, VJ's about 60, John Daly and little John Daly, as they used to call him. Well, they have a Division I player and a guy who's hurt but can still play. So that's a really strong team. The Thomases you expect to be up there, but there are some teams that you don't really expect to be up there. And the Singhs are as good as they've been. You don't really think of them at the beginning of the event as a favorite. And here they are competing all the way to the end and winning by 2. So I thought it was so cool to see how all these teams are able to compete and play well, even though the variance on paper looks to be so large. It just speaks to the unique aspect that the game of golf is.
Yeah, a lot of it to me is just like most tournaments. You know, you could sort of look at the form guide, and I don't know what the odds were before the event, but you'd have your resounding favorites, right? And the Singhs are good, but it just seemed like they ham and egged it so well. And like you point out that hybrid that he hit into the par 5 cast, that is, that was majestic, and it just looked like he had a good one when VJ didn't, and when he missed a putt, VJ made, and they did what you kind of have to do under that format. But to me, my takeaway, Rick, was just, you've heard the cliche, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Well, look, Tiger and Charlie, it's like they're cut from the same cloth. But then you watch golf swings, to build on Greg's point. Cass has got that VJ sort of rhythm, and he's a big guy too. I mean, I remember, here's a throwback. You guys know I've had multiple jobs. Well, when VJ came out on tour, I was with IMG, and I was his agent over in South Africa. Took him to the emergency room, all sorts of stuff. And then shortly thereafter, has little Cass, who I still remember being like this big. Now the guy, I see him and he's like 6'4" and gigantic. So just to watch him swing the club just like his dad and sort of have the same gait, I was like, wow, this, in so many respects, you speak to kids of legends, and it's the legend casts this long shadow, right? But it's got to be such a blessing to be a son or a daughter of someone like that, because just what you learn has got to be unbelievable. Sort of even in passing, what you can learn and sort of glean from them.
The Singhs were 18-1, middle of the road, the 9th shortest odds before the event started. So odds makers had them right in the middle of the pack. They come out, go 59, as we discussed. Greg, VJ, we talk a lot about longevity, and we usually, we save it for Phil and some of these other guys, but VJ is basically in a class by himself of winning after age 40, continuing to play well onto the Champions Tour. Obviously, this is not your full field normal event, but he had a lot of other opportunities. I think this was his 16th appearance to get the job done at the PNC Championship. Finally gets it done. Him, Bernard Longer, Phil Mickelson, these guys are aging like fine wine.
Yeah, it's you have a handful of these guys, but it is rare. and it takes a lot of work. As I know, Mark, you're well aware of this, what it takes for those guys and their efforts as they get older. And when I think of all three of those guys that you mentioned, Rick, Vijay Singh is a notorious ball beater, right? He's the guy that says, well, why would I go play when I can hit balls for 8 hours, right? You know, he's in the gym. He's posted videos of his workout routines. He's working hard. Bernhard Langer is arguably the hardest worker out on PGA Tour champions, if it's not Vijay. Right, he's right up there with them. And then Phil Mickelson, after he won the PGA Championship, he talked about the biggest difference is how he just has to work harder to keep up, whether it's nutrition, working harder in the gym, working harder on his golf game, playing 36 holes a day to work on his focus. As you start to get older, you got to go a little harder to keep up, and not everybody can do that. So it's a real pleasure for all of us when we see guys who are willing to put in that effort, and they certainly reap the benefits.
I'll tell you what, and I'm so on board with what you point out there. And something I noticed watching this afternoon was Bernhard Langer. Look, he was the guy who was on the putting green prior to the event when no one else was even on site. Okay, he was there practicing putting already. And then late in the afternoon round, on like 14 or whatever, his son makes a putt. Bernhard hits a practice putt. Now, they're not necessarily in the event, but the events to win, they're jockeying for position. And yeah, the guy's hitting a practice putt still, and that speaks to just how hard he works. And to that, earlier this week, a friend of mine was out on the golf course in a practice round, and Mr. Player was out there. So they're chit-chatting, and somehow my name comes up. So they give me a phone call from the golf course. And I saw the number ring up, and I'm like, Mike, and yeah, no, Mark, it's Gary Player. How are you doing? And I was like, Mr. Player, my goodness, what are you doing with Mike's telephone? Anyway, so we just sort of talked for a while, and he said, you know what? I said, how are you feeling, Mr. Player? He goes, I'm feeling fantastic. He goes, in fact, I was thinking the other day that I probably arguably have hit the most balls of anyone in the history of the game. He goes, I think of Ben Hogan, I think of Vijay Singh, and I think of myself. He goes, now Hogan got injured, so he didn't hit that many, obviously. He goes, Vijay's hit a lot of balls, but I've got him by like 20 years, and I'm still hitting balls. I don't think he can catch up with me. And that just speaks to, it's a funny story, but it's so true. The desire with these guys maybe gets tempered some because of other things, family and work and commitments and stuff, but they're still golfers, and the fire burns brightly with a lot of them.
You know, what our listeners probably don't know, they might know that if you say, Beetlejuice 3 times, Beetlejuice will appear. If you do a Gary Player impersonation, Kyle Porter will appear. KP, welcome in, sir. Good to have you.
Did he talk about how many miles he's flown?
Not to me, but I'm sure he did.
Globally, I think the quote one time was, I've flown more airplane miles. I've logged more airplane miles than anybody in the history of the world, which is an incredible quote. It might also be true. Who knows?
Iron Byron might hit as many golf balls as Gary Player has, right? That's the machine that just smacks him out there over.
Yeah,
and
the
over
robot.
Again. The robot. Yeah, that might be the only thing. Hi, Kyle.
Hey,
good to have you.
Hi, Kyle.
It's great to be here. Great World Cup. Great PNC.
Oh. What a day. What do you, I mean, you shoot 59-59 to win for the Singhs, but if you would have shot 60-60, that only gets you into a playoff. You make 3 pars in a row at this event. You just chalk up your chances as over.
Well, it was crazy. I was actually thinking about that very thing on Saturday. I was watching, and as good as I think Tiger and Charlie made like 9 2s or 3s in a row, and they were still like 3 back of the lead, and you're like, what? I mean, what do you have to do here? It's kind of extraordinary. I mean, obviously there's a great player on every team, but to put up some of these scores is pretty crazy, considering, these are not both pros. It's a pro and his kid, or a pro and his parent, or whatever. The scoring actually did it always does, but it did catch me off guard a little bit again this year.
The Singhs in at 26 under, a tie for second, Craig. The Dailies and the Thomases 24 under, so that's 2 shots back. Kind of making that segue into how good you have to be and how perfect you have to be. The Dailies were probably the favorites here when they got through 13. That was 5 birdies in a row from 9 to 13, but they make par on 14. That's a par 5. And that starts a par run that basically plays them out of this. So you got to be basically perfect.
Yeah, par train, killer par train. And they, of course, Little John makes the eagle at 18, which was really cool to see. He's impressive.
Mhm.
He hit a lot of big shots when he needed to. He was in the anchor hole, and Dad left a couple openings where they needed him, and he stepped up every time. And look, I mean, he's a Division I golfer. You expect him to be very capable of that, but it's not an easy arena, not an easy environment, and the kid steps up. So I was very impressed with him and his game. But the thing is with them, they were too far ahead. And so you felt like even if they made birdie at 14, or maybe sprinkled in another one on 15, 16, or 17, you just felt like they were going to get outpaced because they were too far ahead, because they struggled on day one to a 61. Which was a little disappointing, but you're right. You have to go on a run for 2 straight days, and a streak of 3-4 pars in a row can really set you back, which we saw with the Thomases, we saw with the Woods, we saw with the Dailies, and it's enough to put you out of contention.
Yeah, out in 6 under 30 for the Thomases, Mark, but it was the dreaded par. 6 of them on the back 9. They only played their second 9, 3 under. They fall 2 shots short of the Singhs.
Yeah, I didn't watch Saturday, but I watched as much as possible today, and it sort of appeared to me that it was up to Justin Thomas to hit shots, and then his dad made a few putts of some sort of consequence, and that what it was what it is. But when you're going up against a young John and John Daly, or even Tiger and Charlie to a certain extent, and then of course the Singhs, where you've got a couple, both guys can really hit it. Both guys are long enough that par 5s become drives and irons and stuff, and you got a few holes where you got wedges in there. Some of the guys off the shorter tees, for argument's sake, like Charlie Woods. It becomes an unfair fight in a way. And so I felt like JT did all he could, and Dad came through with a number of putts. But, that hole starts to look awfully small when it's a birdie fiesta, and you're leaving yourself 25, 30 feet all day long. So they looked maybe a little lethargic to me, didn't have their best ball striking stuff. But look, they've had a win here. They've contended both times, and I expect them to keep on doing it, because I know Dad, Mike, is really into playing this event annually.
The contrast, KP, between Vijay Singh, Bernard Longer, and John Daly, who, if you believe the reports from the course, I believe got about 21 total minutes of practice time in over 2 rounds, including 0 minutes, 0 balls hit on the range, and 0 putts rolled before the Sunday final round, which did not stop them from shooting a 59.
21. So it was all 21 minutes on Saturday.
Yeah, because he got his tee time. He screwed up his tee time and showed up late, and got to the range 21 minutes before the tee time. And then on Sunday, just said, I'm good. I'll just go straight to the first tee.
Well, it's a Rory at Medina situation there when he pulls up and just hammers Keegan Bradley after not warming up. I wonder how many of the pros in this field were the not the best player in their group. I don't think John Daly was the best player in his group, was he?
John, what does he want to be? John 2 or John the 2nd? He can absolutely play. It's so good.
Yeah, he. I mean, the 3 he made on 18 was sick, and I actually thought I was wrong about this. You can go back and listen to it. I said that Charlie would be like the best. I basically said he'd be the best player in his group. He wasn't. Now, some of that was because he was hurt. Some of it was Tiger played better than I think I thought he would. But yeah, the Daly thing is, I don't know. They're such great, and I actually think you see this a lot in this event. They're such great characters. You got a lot of characters in this tournament, and that's just something that we don't have, I think, a ton of week to week in golf. We've got a lot of good players. I don't know if we have great characters, and you get that with the Trevino's and the Dalys and the Tigers and people like that in a tournament like this. So I think that's always enjoyable.
Team Harrington solo fourth, three-way tie for fifth, Kuchar, Korda, Langer. We have not mentioned Team Woods yet. They're coming up. First, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. Tiger Woods, Charlie Woods, T8. That's a three-way tie with the O'Mearas and the Spieths, who Sean Spieth played pretty well. Maybe we can talk about that. But Greg, this was kind of there's a lot to unravel here with Team Woods, because we have seen Tiger clearly dealing with injuries for a long time, limping around a golf course. We were not necessarily expecting the same from Charlie this week, who was dealing with an ankle injury that you could see was really bothering him on Saturday. They went out and shot a 59. They kind of faded on Sunday. It was a 65 for the team, but both of these guys are just out there hobbling around, just trying to put the ball in the cup.
Yeah, it was too bad. I was definitely, I think we all were kind of feeling bad for Charlie, but I was thinking about this as well. When you play most sports, to get through an injury, you can kind of grit your teeth and, try harder, and it can work. But to power through injury in the game of golf is so challenging to get around the golf course and play well. And it doesn't seem like it would be, because it's a non-contact sport, and it's not as physically demanding as playing football or basketball or something like that. But you have to be in so much control, and you have to be ready for that moment when it's going to hurt. And it's such a quick moment, but such a sharp bit of pain, and it can have an effect on you mentally and all that stuff. So it was definitely bothering Charlie from time to time. But despite that, it's such a fun golf swing to watch. It looks so simple it's so mature for a 13-year-old, not just his swing, but his body, the way he's built. It's so different than Tiger was at that age. And he's not that I would compare the two in their resumes, but it's such a cool thing to watch Charlie advance the way he has, because it's just continued to improve. And I think that's really cool. And look, kids get hurt all the time. It's something that happens, and he'll get healthy and he'll be fine in no time. But yeah, it's a really special and a rare thing to get to watch these two out there playing together.
If I may add here my take on this, because I've been fortunate to see a lot of really talented young players, including my younger brother. And I don't want to say these kids come and go, but I just want to sort of advise fans and people like this to say, just like we have to with Tiger Woods and our expectations of him, we're going to pump the brakes on our Charlie expectations a little bit too, because the world is going bananas. I mean, I actually joked with someone at the PGA Tour where on Twitter, they put a picture of the guy's divot pattern on the practice range. And I was like, we've collectively lost our minds if we're finding this entertaining. Now to Charlie, I mentioned it earlier, what a blessing it is to grow up with Tiger as a father, or VJ as a dad, or you got my closest brush with some of that was Larry Myers. I taught his son Robert for a long time, also turned into a very good player, Masters champion as a dad. And there's so many benefits from there, and then there's so many things that can be distractions. And the one thing I saw as I watched Charlie, how just like his dad, he's almost learned to be singular in his focus. And that was the most impressive thing to me, because look, golf swings come and go. You could see here, I don't know what happened with his foot. Tiger said it was growing pains, but that physical element of it is so mercurial. But what you do between your ears is the most important thing in many respects. And you can see how Charlie has learned that from his dad, from his routines, pre and post shots, to the way he reacts to shots, to the way he prepares for tournaments. It's thoroughly professional. And for a 13-year-old, he's well above the tech from that point of view. And if he keeps on doing this, look, I think the future is very bright. But then you've also just got to kind of manage yourself and do a good job of coming to grips with the fact that, I'm Charlie Woods, and I've got to deal with this more than anything else, because the guy's got a fan base of biblical proportion already. And he's got to have to work very hard to sort of keep that into perspective some, because this golf thing can knock you down pretty quickly. And, when you've got the last name Woods, the spotlight shines pretty bright. And all of us have had the luxury of making all our failures in the dark somewhere, whereas, from that point of view, you don't. So he's massively impressive to me. I'd love to watch him play a little bit in person. But I'm just struck with how well assembled he is mentally and how he plays the game, let alone his golf swing, which is really pretty.
The worst part about this week, Kyle, is everyone trying to figure out what a 13-year-old is going to be in a sport that is almost impossible to predict. I can tell you when I was 13, the best athlete we had was head and shoulders better than everybody else. And by the time we were all 15, he stunk because he just happened to be the first one shaven. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on for these kids. And to put, it's always awkward to try to talk about this when it's Charlie. It's like, I don't know what he's going to be. Let the kid go out there and play golf.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. I think this. I was talking to my brother. My brother was in town this week. He was in Los Angeles. He's in sort of the not the film industry, but more in like that world. He's not in sports at all. And he was asking about because we were watching the event, and he was asking if being Tiger's son was an advantage in terms of like making it, right? And I got to thinking about that. I thought it was an interesting question, and I got to thinking about that, and I mean, of course, it's an advantage because you've got Tiger living in your house, and like he can, give you lessons and teach you stuff, and like that can't not be an advantage. But I think the beauty of golf, and not to tie it too much to 2022, is that it's still, maybe more than any other industry, like it's just like whatever you shot is what you shot. You don't get an acting job, or you don't get a job on the PGA Tour like you might an acting job because your dad is Tom Hanks or Denzel Washington or whatever, right? And I think that I don't know, we just had a really interesting conversation about that, and it made me really appreciate the meritocratic nature of golf. And I think like whatever Charlie ends up being is going to be interesting, and that's fine. We'll follow it. I think for this event, like specifically talking about this week and what that means for the next few months, it's like, it's like, it needs to be self-contained. Like, let's just appreciate it for the time frame that it's in for these 2 days. Appreciate the fact that I think in a lot of ways, Charlie provides something for Tiger that nobody else could, which is relational equivalence. Right. The power dynamic between Tiger and everybody else is very far apart. And it almost takes somebody that's in his own family to level that playing field and provide some, again, like relational equivalence that Tiger can't get anywhere else. And I think there's something beautiful about getting to watch that unfold. But as for what it means for 5 years from now, or even next week, I just don't have very much interest in that.
And for the record, we've got some guys on the PGA Tour and some pretty good ones who didn't even start playing golf until they were 13 or 14 or 15, or Sam Ryder, I think, was 16 when he started playing golf. He's on the PGA Tour. That's crazy. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, the current commissioner of the Live Tour only started playing golf at age 21.
Yeah.
Just for the record. Yep.
Yeah. A lot of different ways to get it done. Let's talk about the big cat, Greg. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to get too excited.
Don't do it.
I know I know it was a scramble with his son at a resort, in a golf cart.
Don't do it.
Okay, I'm not going to do it, but I will say this. Tiger played better than I thought. I had very low expectations, but Tiger played better than I thought.
Yes, I agree. He did play better than I thought as well. The cart is a big factor. I think the golf course is also a big factor. That is, I mean, you got guys out there shooting back-to-back 59s, right? It's not, it doesn't have the demands of the golf courses that we're going to see Tiger play on the next time he plays, whether it's Augusta National, an event before that, any event on the PGA Tour. This golf course doesn't carry the same demands. So there are a couple things that I worry about. One, obviously, the walk-in is a huge factor. I never thought I'd say that, but we've been saying it for 2 years now. It's a huge factor, likely the biggest factor of them all. And then what that leads to is what can he do in his practice? What can he do in his preparation? And I still think there's some things on and around the greens that need to be a lot sharper for him. Because, of course, with Charlie, there's no need to talk about expectations for the future. It's unfair to do that, in fact. But with Tiger, we have a very limited future. We all know that. And so we want to know what that future looks like. And to project into the future, there are a couple things he really has to improve in order to win number 83, which is seemingly the most reachable yet biggest milestone left for him. And I think he's got to get a lot sharper around the greens, which I think the walk-in really affects. So I was very happy with the way that he played. He had a lot of great shots. The speed is there for sure. But I still think there's a long way to go to see Tiger contending in a PGA Tour event, let alone a major.
I said this in last week's recap show. In my experience, I feel like Tiger, information free, is probably the best analyzer of his own game of anybody I've ever seen. And he's got this wonderful ability to be pragmatic about what he does and then go home and go and work on that area and improve it. And I said last week, I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out this week looking a whole lot sharper than what he did when he played in the match, right? And he did. To me, the golf swing looked way more fluid. The speed was way more in the right place. And everyone was going crazy about the ball speed or the club speed, whatever it was in the match. I thought this week he was generating energy a whole lot more easily and not putting as much stress in his body, especially into the follow-through. So that was a positive. And he had some really nice shots. There was one, a long iron off sort of a downsloping lie where it looked like he squared it up, but just aimed it too far right because he was trying to turn one. So there was a lot of really good stuff on the go. But to Greg's point, I mean, there were one or two pitch shots. There was one that was just downright sexy. I mean, it was a wedge from about 60 yards.
Oh, yeah.
And look, the greens are softer than on the PGA Tour, and he nipped this thing off this tight lie like it was a razor. And it spun in there to kick-in range, and I was like, whoa, this is nice. But then he's got this basic chip pitch shot from green side off the fairway and leaves it 15 feet short. And that sort of stuff's got to catch up with one. So I'm keen to see, where he starts going now with the short game, because, you can work on the golf swing, you can work on the strength, you can work on all that sort of stuff, but you've got to recover. And he said as much in the broadcast here in a recent event. I think it was the Hero, where it was like, when I was at my best, I had 13 greens in regulation a day. That means I missed 5. That means I've got to get them up and down 5 times. And I said that to Justin Thomas, that he's got to go and work on saving shots, recovering, knocking it down a 10-footer. That's where it is for Tiger. And then, of course, look, let's not beat around the bush. 72 holes. When's he start? Torrey Pines? That place is a brute. Okay, Rick, you walked around there, and you've got side hill lies everywhere. I'm keen to see how the leg deals with that. Then you start to get into the West Coast swing where stuff is kind of cold and damp, and so I'm keen to see how he comes out in 2023.
Well, that's
is he going to play? He's not going to play. He's not going to play Torrey Pines, is he?
Let's talk about this. That's
an elevated event, huh?
That's the next spot.
It's not.
Not okay.
No.
So let's talk about it. So game aside, forget about the game. Tiger month is over, right? We the 3 times we were supposed to get Tiger in December, we got 2. It's over. So now we're looking to 2023. We are 12 days away from him being 47 years old. We are 109 days away from the Masters. What happens between now and then? Is it Torrey? Is it an elevated event? Is it going into the Masters without compete? Like, where could we even see him next?
Yeah. He's not going to play in January, right? I don't think
so either.
I think then it's Riviera, which
is mid-February, Riviera.
Yeah.
His event.
And then you got Bay Hill and the Players.
But they're back-to-back.
He won't. I don't think he plays both of those. I think he'll try to play one time before the Masters. And I don't know which of those it'll be. I don't know if it's Players, Bay Hill, Riviera, but I'm guessing it's one of those 3.
Should be Punta Cana 2 weeks before, try to get 83 under your
Get
belt.
83. That would
Yeah.
be sweet. I mean, listen, I was going to say real quick, Greg, I thought what Greg said was good. And, I think about even this time last year, remember we hadn't seen him in forever, and he comes out and he's hitting all these, like, his ball speed was pretty good. He's hitting these crazy, like, cut drives, and you're like, whoa, this is incredible. And then what we get at, like, on the other side of that is a very kind of staggered year where it's like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, a step forward, 2 steps, like it just, I think that's just what it is. So I don't think, I almost don't even think it's worth putting any stock into like what he did this week, because it doesn't really, I don't think it like translates linearly to the next even 2 months, and so it's just hard to predict based on what he's even doing in the current moment, because I think there's so much volatility to that, to like his injuries, that it's almost impossible to say how good he's going to be or even where he's going to play, because we would have all said in November, like, oh, he's going to play the Hero World Challenge, right? And then he thought he was, and then he didn't. So I just think all of that is going to be, as hard as Tiger's been to predict over the last 5 years, it's going to get even harder in the future.
And you have those little flare-ups like plantar fasciitis that I don't think anybody could expect. But you have an area in your body that's deficient. And when you have imbalance like that, injuries pop up in other areas. Kyle's talked about this a lot. Don't forget about the back, right? You have a back, you have a right leg that's extremely hampered. You got hips and knees and all kinds of areas that are affected from an injured leg. And so predicting where he's going to play comes down to predicting his health, which is impossible for any of us to do. So I do think it's a challenge. But I will say, to your point, Kyle, of those 3 events, the Florida ones, the players or Bay Hill certainly make the most sense to me. Easiest walks, close to home for him. They make more sense than the Genesis, even though the Genesis is his event, which is kind of the kicker with that one. But yeah, I mean, if I'm Tiger, I'm trying to keep it flat, because I think he needs time more than anything else to get ready for the Masters, which there's no place that can prepare you for the Masters anyway. So take the strain off and play somewhere flat if you're going to play at all.
Yeah, and to that back, Greg, the preparation, what it's like practicing putting with a tender back. And we've identified like a weakness in the game right now. If there's weaknesses, and never a good thing to describe a Tiger Woods deficiency, but just an infirmity right now. Practicing putting and chipping in that short stuff where you bent over a little bit more, that'll wear you out physically. And then to the playing, the West Coast swing is a stretch. I think Riviera, him teeing it up in LA would be awesome. But you also know with Tiger, he never goes to a place when he's not completely prepared. And he's always spoke about being well prepared for whatever he plays in. So as I look at, Riviera, Torrey Pines, he's been successful, but Riviera, he hasn't really. Bay Hill has been wildly successful. The players, Tiger-wise, he hasn't really. Anyone else, he's had a wonderful career there. So I'm sort of thinking Bay Hill, because it is a little closer to South Florida. And Jacksonville in March can get cold and blustery and not very pleasant. So I'm not sure where we will see him again.
It's kind of an awkward schedule. The elevated events are kind of in weird spots. The events that you think he could play are back to back, which we know he's not going to play. Though it's just kind of a really awkward spot. He might just wake up and say, I'm feeling good this week, or I'm feeling not. I don't know. It's going to be weird. Kyle, has he considered, think about this. If it's just the walking, instead of Joey LaCava, why doesn't he hire the world's strongest man?
Like the coach?
Or the coach. And that guy carries him between shots. Have they considered this at all?
Like hire Nick Bosa away from the 49ers just to carry him around the golf course?
Right. That's like, is there a rule that says you can't the caddy can't carry the player?
That would be sick.
That would be sick. Could you imagine? Instead, he's got a 3-shot lead walking up the 18th at Augusta National, and he's doing the wave over the shoulder of the coach or the world's strongest man. It would take a little something out of the moment, but it would still be cool.
Yeah,
Talk about normal sport.
oh my gosh. I'd have to write I mean, the next edition would be 9,000 pages. It would be unbelievable. I think he honestly, I mean, we're laughing about it. He would probably prefer that to a cart. Like, he is so
right. He's so anti-cart.
principally against a cart. It's just, it's kind of incredible. So yeah, you should pitch that to him at whatever event we're at next with him.
Yeah, I'll shoot
Just,
him.
hey, if you can, do you know the coach? Have you thought about this?
Of course, he knows the coach.
You can't hire a coach. I mean, can you imagine the verbal diarrhea that would be happening the entire time? Tiger's quite quiet on the golf
He'd be
course.
too tired. Coach would be too tired to talk.
Yeah, that would.
You carry a Tiger Woods in a staff bag around?
He's never too
Oh,
tired.
and the bag.
Yeah.
yeah.
Somebody. I mean, I don't think you can have two caddies. You got to carry the bag and Tiger.
Would you put the straps on Tiger so that you could put him on your back like you do the bag?
Yeah.
No, I think you put the straps. You got to go double strap, and Tiger kind of Tiger puts his legs around that, kind of sits on it like a saddle.
Okay, so you just put,
a
you would
piggyback
get
ride,
like
basically.
you would get like a saddle from Hal Sutton and just throw it on the staff bag.
Right.
I think we got this figured out.
That would be something.
Giddy up.
Giddy up. Well, on that note, is there anything else that we should talk about? Thinking about next week, we are putting the finishing touches. Kyle, this might perk your ears up. We're putting the finishing touches on a trivia show at some point next week. So we're working out the details on that, and we'll probably have something else in the hopper so that everybody who's traveling for the holiday will have something to listen to, but we won't necessarily have to be here on Christmas Day. That's the magic of showbiz, recording them early and then releasing them later in the week.
After I win trivia next week, do I get 2 trophies on my name down there, or is it?
No, it's like the green jacket. You just get the one.
So it's not like when Fed puts like 6 gold plates on his Wimbledon shoes.
Right.
Okay.
Who's the reigning one and done champion? Why doesn't he have a trophy next to his name?
It's you. So we'll okay. How about this? I think Kyle should get a second trophy, and we'll figure out a one and done, like a money bag for you there, Mark.
I want the yellow jersey, like the Tour de France.
Now the other thing is, remember, we have someone who paid like $3,600 to be in our one and done for next year. That I'm sure Mark is not spending that money just to see your pretty face every week or just to send it all to a good cause. They want to be the champ.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to be on the show?
I believe we will probably have them on as like the first like intro. Hey, how's it going? Why did you spend all this money to do this? What were you thinking? Are you absolutely insane? Thank you so much. That type of thing. And then I think we'll just have them submit their picks. Just as like the fans choose from a form. The person who won the auction to get in can pick whoever they want. They can do it just like us.
It would be amazing if we put that person on and they came in the waiting room and then it was just like a second camera on Mark. Like it was just him.
Like from the
Just
side
wanted 2
angle.
spots.
Hey, Kyle,
Yeah.
Kyle, you know what's going to be good? We get to pick for whatever 8 months or whatever it is from all of the players. We're not using players in the fall, unlike the fans last year who were crowing the entire time. You're going to get to use all of those stars like more than one time, and you got a bigger plethora of golfers to go with because of that. It's going to be awesome.
Probably not going to help me much, but it will be fun.
Mark, you're usually ahead of the. Do you already have your Sony pick? Do you want to put your Sony pick in right now, Mark?
Wait, what are we not doing?
Century.
I guess we could do
Capella?
Century. We could do tournament. Yeah, we'll do tournament champions.
Are they going to let? No, I haven't even thought about it.
They're not letting him
Remember
play.
remember when I picked Stuart Singh? Or no, who was it that I had to pick?
I'm going John Rahm early.
Wow.
Is he in? Yeah, he's in, right?
Yeah.
With the new rules.
Yeah, you picked. Was it Stuart? No, you didn't pick. You double picked, and we gave you somebody who was like 500 to 1.
That sounds right.
Was it Stuart Singh? I thought it was somebody that was worse than Stuart Singh.
I thought it was somebody who was way worse than Stuart Singh.
It was very
Like Robert Streb, maybe.
No,
might
it was
have been.
somebody that was older. So Rory let this sort of slip at the match, maybe, where he said he was asked about his schedule, and he said he's not decided whether he's going to play Tournament of Champions. Did you guys hear this?
Yes. I can try to find the quote.
He said he's not decided on whether he's going to play Tournament of Champions, and he said something like, I'm going to basically just summarize because I don't remember the quote. He said something like, effectively, you're going to be allowed to miss one of the elevated events, which I had, and maybe that was out there. I had not heard that before. It's not surprising. I think that's probably what people would have suspected would be the case, but I just had not heard it before, which I thought was interesting.
We will talk about that, but I also think that some of these guys are not going to play. I think there's going to be a little bit of wiggle room the way that I understand. John Rahm's not going to play all 20 of them or whatever. And Jay Monahan's not going to say, sorry, John, you're no longer an elevated player. There's going to be a little wiggle room there. I got to get us out of here. So here's what I'm going to do. We've got trivia coming at some point next week. We'll put the details on that. We'll probably have a second episode as well. Big thanks to producer Troy, does all the hard work behind the scenes. Mark Immelman, available at Mark_Immelman. Greg DuCharme at The Real GFD. Kyle Porter at Kyle Porter CBS. And you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.